Board of Finance
Then we'll
to
be on the
order.
same
We're
level.
looking for a couple members, I think, that are still here in the building, so we want to make sure that we have a quorum, so.
You have a quorum? Yeah.
Not in the room.
All right,
Let me get.
But we believe that there's one in the building, so we need to get,
Why am I smiling?
Oh, Alan is here.
Oh, yeah. I know, sorry. I'm charged. That's right.
That could be reportable.
Mickey Mouse. All right, bring it away.
Am I at home? Because I have to leave early.
Well, get your sit down.
All right.
Look at me. What we don't know won't hurt us.
There you go.
We're gonna be out of here quick. Bobby's gonna go really quick, right?
okay.
Yes.
And, what time you gotta get
Okay,
out?
just give me
I have to leave about 20 of.
Okay.
Quarter of.
Be out of here by then.
My son and his wife has anniversary dinner with the whole family.
Oh, good, nice, yeah, nice.
What time?
The dinner's at 6. It's gonna take me 20 minutes to get
Do you have an
there.
address?
Okay, the meeting's been called to order. Are there any public comment? This is the meeting of the, this is the regular meeting of the Board of Finance, excuse me. Wednesday, October 25th, 5 PM. Are there any public comments relative to the agenda items of this meeting? Any public comments? Hearing none, move on to approval of the meeting minutes of September 27th, 2023. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes from any of the members?
Move adoption. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor of accepting the minutes as presented, signify by saying aye.
Bye.
Okay, motion carries. Consideration of potential action regarding the approval for State of Connecticut financing Clean Water Fund 692-C2. This is an attachment that you should have with your agenda. Go ahead, Bob Barron.
Bob,
is that
yes,
correct?
Bob.
Sure. This is quick. You see these clean water funds in front of you during most of your meetings throughout the year. This 692-C2 is a $313.1 million project. It's the construction of the South Hartford Tunnel. But this, what's before you tonight, is adding $10 million to that $313 million for a total of $323 million. Now, the original agreement with DEEP was for a 45% grant and a 55% loan. So what's before you is just the request to add on the additional $10 million. It's actually $9,939,903, but we'll take that additional $10 million and it qualifies for the same 45% grant and 55% loan. So we're asking for your approval tonight for the additional $10 million at the same structure as the original larger project was approved for.
Any questions from commissioners?
Move the item.
Questions for Bob from members of the body? Where?
Commissioner Hoffman, I don't think he heard you.
Any questions for Bob on this
No,
particular budget
Move
item?
the item.
Hoffman moved.
I moved the item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Didn't
I
hear you. I'm
second.
sorry. I thought you had a question. So there's a motion. Is there a second?
I have a question. Is it too late?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Bob, for the presentation so far. I missed what you said about where this is going to be worked on.
Oh, let's see. I think it's in the second paragraph of the description. And the reason why I'm taking time to describe it now, because the next one we're going to cover, it's the exact same way. So it says, for the construction of the South Hartford Conveyance and Storage Tunnel and the shaft, and they referred to it as the project, so,
Thank you, that was it.
sure.
All right, there's a motion and a second. I'm sorry, there wasn't a second. There's a motion. Is there a second? Okay, all right, I'm sorry. Okay, any other discussion on the motion? Okay, and this is this a resolution, John?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so all in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
See, item number 5, consideration of potential action regarding.
We go to 6 just to get the.
Oh, I keep forgetting that. We did ask that one of our consultants give us a presentation, as we did earlier with the other two entities. And I believe that he's on the line, so we want to keep him on the line. And this is our, if I'm correct, this is our energy consultant, Mr.
Electric, yeah, electric energy consultant.
Electric energy, Costello, is that,
Yep.
that's right?
Costello, yep.
Okay, so,
Yeah, Rich Costello, yep.
yeah, so, yes,
If I may, through you without your objection or committee objection, I may have to leave early. I have to leave early. Could we move down to number 7 while there's a quorum we can take a vote on and then move back to number 6?
Actually, I would ask for number 5. It's very similar to the one we just covered. It's in, no?
This guy's gotta get off the
Okay.
yeah, so,
phone. 5 minutes for that.
Everyone's fighting for time.
I know, and I had the impression that number 7 was gonna be lengthier than a couple
really?
minutes,
We have
so,
Rich come back.
I don't know. Let's let him make his comment. I'm sorry, Mr. Commissioner
5
Curry,
minutes,
but, he asked if he could speak at 5 and we weren't ready to let him speak.
Sure, that's,
Okay.
Rich says that's fine.
Go ahead,
I can wait.
go ahead, Mr. Costello.
Okay, so electricity for the authority are going to be up, for the commission, excuse me. And the procurement process we've gone through since 2007 multiple times. It's time to think about doing that again. The reason to do that is the procurement process takes a couple of months, and we want to be ready to strike at a good price if and when that happens, even 12 months out. So this is a process which should be set up. We should run the process so at any time the price of natural gas and or the price of electricity is advantageous to the MDC, we can move forward on selecting a vendor for the next couple of years. So it's kind of crucial now. I know it runs out many months from now, but I would suggest that the MDC folks start thinking of the procurement process and getting that rolling. The price of natural gas. Think about moving forward with the both electric and gas now to get prepared for next year.
Okay, I did have, and thank you for agreeing to do this tonight. I did have a conversation with the chairman of the board about this, and a list of considerations that we wanted to go forward to talk about, at Board of Finance. I understand the staff, the response I got is that staff had already included some budget in the budget with respect to the contract that we had with you previously. I believe it was Kelly Shane that said that there's something in there. So, Mr. Chairman, why don't you go ahead and go ahead and you had comments about this, so go ahead.
Yeah, I guess last year we went, or I'm sorry, the last time we went in was for 22, for the 3 years, 22, 3, and 4. And we were at, what, 9 cents, I believe, the procurement rate is. Is it not? It went from 6 to 9 cents in that 3-year period. Looking at what
Correct.
just in general conversation here, I know you're not, haven't looked at this issue, but you talked about gas prices going up, and obviously we're going to see the same thing happen again. I think we just went through a 22% increase in the last month. What do you see as a number that makes some sense for the next 3 years, starting in 25, 6, and 7, given where the marketplace has going and where you think it's going?
Yeah, I don't. Perhaps 10%, 6 to 10%. The reason for that is the futures price of natural gas has gone down a little bit than that spike we had when we last time went to purchase it. It was an unfortunate timing event, so this next time around, we'll see an increase, but I don't expect it to be the same. I'm thinking, from maybe 6 to 10%. That would be simultaneously for both gas and probably electricity, since they're tied pretty close in New England.
Yeah,
So
but isn't,
I don't see.
you
Go
don't
ahead.
see 22, you see a 10%?
Yeah, I think that's too high.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
So you're saying there'd be an increase of a penny
I think so, yeah.
to 10 cents? What's happening with the collapse of basically the wind market in Connecticut? I had a meeting with the governor a couple of weeks ago, and he's concerned that he's going to have ability to sell gas, to get enough electricity. Because the New York gas situation hasn't changed much. They're still not letting gas through up into Connecticut. Isn't that going to create this an additional problem?
yeah. Extension into the future on that. And if, believe it or not, we have to still use natural gas. It's cheaper than the renewable energy that people contracted for these wind turbines. So, yeah.
That gas is our problem, because no one's investing
Yeah.
in gas lines, and you can't get up through New York because they've sort of blocked us on coming up through the Marcella fields to New England.
Well, you use it a lot during the summertime too. So the effect on you is a little bit less of an effect than for the folks who use gas just in the wintertime, because the pipelines are pretty free and open in the summertime. And they're stable, going up a little. The pipeline transportation part of that gas price that you pay may go up a little bit, but I was accounting for that already when I said around 10%. Again, nobody knows the future, but that problem with the gas pipeline has been there for years already. It's not like it's new in the last couple of years. It's been there for many years. That's why up in Boston we bring in LNG. But that's been like that since the 70s, the LNG bringing in Boston. So, yeah, they've always been there, though, for the last couple of years.
So you recommend that we start looking at this thing now, is what you're saying?
Yeah. If you
Okay.
Fine.
Good.
I-
it's a process.
Are you all set?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get into
Yeah, I
the
just-
the
no,
whole
no, real
energy
quick.
thing. This
No.
is supposed to be about making sure that he's still under contract. with
Yes,
us. So, yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
And Rich, this is Scott.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Hey, Scott.
Good, good.
Good,
So,
how
just a real quick though, in terms of when we look at this, so I just want to be clear, if you could clarify. So our contract is in a sense take or pay. We have a margin, a window of roughly 10 to 15%. So our contract ends for electricity anyways in late October. So when we start bidding, we got it, every year we do this. And as Rich said, we've done this since 2007. We can't procure something today when the contract ends in a year from now, because it's a take or pay. So we've got to be, as Rich said, this is a strategy of looking at where the market is. But we've got to be very conscious of that existing contract, is all my point.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that.
Gotcha.
Okay. Well, I want to say that I appreciate you taking the time, and I hope you're careful driving while you're driving. Thanks. I'm sure you're going to hear from us.
All right, have a good day.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
So, and that
Bye-bye.
was, yep, that was Richard Costello?
Yes.
Richard
Yep.
Costello, our energy consultant, yeah. So we're gonna move to the, next item that we wanna, that we need to vote on. I believe.
We lose Don Curry to make, so number 7.
Yeah, yeah, so that's what we wanna go to.
Going to seven.
Okay, item number 7. We're gonna skip 5 for now, we're gonna move to 7, we'll go back to 5, is that what we're doing?
5 needs a vote.
Yeah, okay, so,
Introduce Sharice,
do
so
5,
everybody understands who she
Do
is
5 too.
when you
Yeah.
do.
5 and then 7.
You
yeah,
want to do
you
5
wanna do
first?
5 first? Okay, I thought you asked to do 7
of them.
first.
Here, I know,
Both of them
but
require votes.
you gotta leave in 10 minutes.
Let's do 5 first, because it's relatively easy, it's the same as the other one, so, all right, Bob, you wanna go through item number 5 then? It's pretty close to what we talked about in item number 4. so.
Thanks so much. I just didn't want to miss the vote. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Clean Water Fund 698C, this is number 5. This is for the East Hartford Water Pollution Control Facility upgrades.
We're against that.
The previous one we did was adding 10 million to a very large project. This is what you see more often throughout the year. This is a new project. We've gone to deep. It's about $17.4 million. This one, we're getting a 20% grant and an 80% loan. And so that's what's before you. The request to enter into the agreement for $17.4 million, where we're receiving a 20% grant and 80% loan for the upgrades to the East Hartford Water Pollution Control Facility.
Okay, are there any questions for Bob? Commissioners, we have a motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second, any further comment? Without any further comment, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Now we have item number 7. We're going to go to item number 7 because it requires a vote, and we can go back to 6, which doesn't require a vote. So. Okay, item number 7, Bob?
Sure. What we've put before you is a proposal to set aside $2 million as a rate stabilization fund to help offset the cost of the long-term water treatment plan that has been presented to you. Remember, we said there's $47 million in the first 7 years, and there were different options how we would fund beyond that. I think up to, I didn't bring it with me, $300 and some odd million. What we're saying here is we could have presented a budget to you Just like last year, when we went from $4.09 per CCF on our water rate, all the way down to $3.80. So we had that 7.1% decrease. We could have presented a budget to you this year that reduced it by $2 million or brought it down by another 11 cents. However, what we're saying instead is let's keep the rate. It's always harder to take something back once you've given it. And so we're saying, since we're in this position where we have $2 million available, why don't we set it aside and say that we'll utilize that for when we do this $47 million worth of projects. Remember, let's say 10 million is in year one. You give me authorization to go out and, if this is, it depends on how we raise the money. The debt service payment will come due in year two. Normally what happens when you have a debt service payment is I have to raise the money somehow, and we usually raise it by increasing the water rate. What we're saying now is because we have this surplus, let's designate $2 million, or restrict it is the correct term. Let's restrict this $2 million to help mitigate any increases due to the debt service on this long-range water treatment plan upgrade that's been presented at multiple committees and at the board level. And so that's what's before you now. I'll tell you the quick math if you're curious. We plan on about 17.7 million CCFs worth of water consumption a year. And you have $2 million. If you divide one into the other, you get about 11 cents. And so we're saying if you restrict this $2 million, the first 11 cents worth of what normally would be an increase to your water rate because we're improving our water treatment facilities, that first 11 cents, it would not go on the bill because we're setting it aside now. We're also proposing that should we have surpluses in the future, perhaps what we could do is set aside enough money in the next several years where those first 7 years, $47 million worth of debt issuances will not raise the water rate. I can't tell you whether that's going to happen or not, but this would be the first step to help mitigate those increases in costs.
Bob, I have a question that I'd just like you to explain this part of it. Maybe Scott's involved in it as well. I'll let other commissioners ask questions, but this I think is just, so I think what you're saying here now is that you restrict the $2 million that's raised by an 11 cents per CCF increase on the water rate. Is that correct?
Well, what I'm saying is we're proposing we go in at 380. We could have proposed going down to 369 and given $2 million worth of savings to the ratepayers. But since we just are on the heels of a 7% decrease, 409 to 380, lower than any other water utility in the state, why don't we just keep it at 380 instead of giving the 11 cents? But when I raise the money, I'll be able to restrict that $2 million to reduce increases in the future.
Okay, so you sort of answered my question. So once we do this, the way this is worded or the way this is understood is that this $2 million is not available for anything other than rate stabilization. And you know, so should we go down, we can vote this in here? And should we go down the road a few weeks and it gets to the district board and they don't want to do that, or they think that they want to use the possible 11 cents for something else or split it up? I mean, you understand that, you know, that we can do this here, but this is not the end of the line. So you're going to have that money in a black box somewhere, And, you know, if something comes along and we need it, the way you worded this is that we can't get at it. That it's only for rate stabilization.
Yeah,
So
and
we
if
can
I
answer it.
just-
Go ahead.
I just wanted-
Let
okay.
Commissioner Curry ask the question.
If I read this resolution correctly, $2 million doesn't come into play. We're only establishing the stabilization rate fund. As we move through the budget process, we'll determine if we have $2 million to set aside anywhere, where it should go. Maybe one place, multiple places, maybe there'll be more than $2 million. But we're only creating the fund itself. We're not approving $2 million to go into the fund. We're not locking up any dollars.
No, just the reality or the fact of it is that on sales of water, how many CCFs we sell times 11 cents, it's going to wind up being close to $2 million. Am I correct with that? So
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
We,
So go ahead,
we
Scott.
would restrict the $2 million at the end of because we'll be collecting a full 380 for January through December of 2024. We will have that extra money that we will restrict and ensure that at least the first 11 cents of our investments in the water treatment facility upgrades will not hit the water bill because we've already collected it.
As we move through with the budget process and approve the final budget, it's the board that will restrict that $2 million.
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
Sure. And
That's
if the
down the
board
road.
chooses not to, then our $3.80 will become $3.69.
And if I
Go ahead, go ahead.
If I may, just to clarify, what we have proposed is to utilize this $2 million and put it into this account. If the board so chooses to Commissioner Curry's point. But I want to be very clear here. What we're proposing, and the board can choose to do something different, but what we're proposing is this money is restricted specifically for reducing or managing the rate increases associated with the master plan. So it's not there to say, we're not proposing this. If their $2 million is there next year, we're not proposing to say the water rate increased by X because of operational expenses, and therefore we're going to grab that $2 million and use it to lower the rate. This is solely for the purpose of mitigating the debt service associated with the master plan. Now, if the board says, no, we want that to be rate stabilization fund so that we can mitigate the costs, it's tomato, right? You really talk about the same thing? You can decide, but we're proposing.
About that now.
Yep, got it.
But my point was something beyond that, Scott, which is if somebody decides, if the board decides that it needs $50,000 to do something in West Hartford Parks, you know, at the reservoir, that money's not available for that. They're going to have to appropriate an additional $50,000.
Only when we put it into the stabilization fund.
Correct.
And that's not under discussion now.
That's
Correct.
no, it is.
No, it isn't. We're only talking about creating the stabilization fund.
I understand
When we do the
that.
budget, we'll determine how much, if
I
any,
just want
goes into
commissioners
it.
to understand that you can't go back to that and say, well, we got this $2 million surplus. It's not a surplus. It's a rate stabilization fund. It's not available for anything else. So if we want to do something else, or the board wants to do something else, they're going to have to appropriate additional monies on top of this rate stabilization fund. That's
If we approve the budget, as we move forward and approve the budget, and we find we have $2 million in surplus, it's surplus funds until we move it into the rate stabilization fund line.
Could I, Mr. Chairman?
I don't think that's what Bob's saying, but we could do that, but that's not what Bob's saying. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. This is John Myrtle. To your point, Commissioner Curry, the final resolution paragraph reads, so the Water Bureau passed basically a similar resolution. Water Bureau has control to set the rate, obviously subject to board approval. Water Bureau recommended to finance and the board the creation of this rate stabilization fund. And this last paragraph, Board of Finance recommends the district board the creation of a water rate stabilization fund dedicated solely for funding, in part, raw water master plan upgrades, and that 11 cents of the 2024 district water rate be allocated to said fund. So I think that's slightly different than from what you're describing, that at a later point, the money would be set into that
I
rate
stand
stabilization.
corrected, and to that point then, I would argue that we're not in a position to approve spending any dollars, especially $2 million, and putting it in anywhere until we at least sit down as a board and discuss the budget. That's, that last part with the 11 cents should be pulled. We just want to create the fund. And then when we find out we have $2 million, we can determine that it should go into that fund. But not, we're not in a position, we don't even know there's $2 million there, even though we may be told there is.
So what you're saying, I want to make sure I understand what
And
you're
it doesn't
saying.
have to happen tonight.
And I don't necessarily disagree with you, that we could approve the establishment of a rate stabilization fund and not put the actual dollar amount on it for now and leave that up to the board after we do the discussion.
It should be part of the budget.
And my only point, I hope everybody understands this, was that I didn't want anyone to get the impression that we have $2 million sitting somewhere that's a surplus and that anybody has some project that they think they need the money for, get it out of there. Does not propose that. Scott has said this is going strictly for the raw water master plan, and I agreed, and the Water Bureau too. I think it's a great idea. I think that the board needs to say how much they want to put in it and come up with the rate. So if you want to make that motion. I'll be okay
I would
with
make a motion to amend the motion so that we're only creating the rate stabilization fund. We're not talking about the 11 cents or $2 million or any of that. We're just creating a fund so that when we do the budget, if we find we have the money and the 29 members of the board determine that that's where it should go, then that's where it'll go.
Do you get that? Yeah, so we approved the structure, just not the amount yet, that the district board will approve the amount. That's all we're saying.
Yeah, and Water Bureau's recommendation was the 11 cents. I mean, so this doesn't happen, does not have to happen tonight. To your point there, the public hearing's the November 2nd, finance is, I believe, November 9th. And that is potentially a date where the budget is, the resolutions are approved and whatnot. But this does not have to happen tonight. It could be tabled and held off until that future meeting.
I think
Or
it
you
would
could
behoove
modify
us
it to
take action tonight to create the line item. Whether we're going to use it or not is a question for future weeks away as we move through the budget. I'm all in favor of creating it, and I hope we have money to put into it.
Any other members of the board have a comment on this? So because I'd like to allow, Commissioner Kerr to go forward with his motion if there's going to be a second. But any other comment?
Yeah.
Commissioner Hoffman?
Yeah, I mean, can't we just, to follow Commissioner Curry's line of thinking, just strike the last phrase on that further resolved? We've got the document, it says it creates it, and strike the last phrase, and I think that takes care of Commissioner Curry's concern.
And Commissioner Hoffman, you're speaking from
Talking about the
and
last
that 11
paragraph
cents,
or the
right?
last page?
Yes, correct, I'll read it. So, and that 0.11 of the 24 district water rate be allocated to said fund.
That could be amended.
So we just strike that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
Mr. Chairman?
I don't have a problem with that, but the bottom line issue is, we can establish this at some future point. The board could change their mind on what they want to do anyway and take it out of it and do what they want to do with it. This is not something that.
I gotta clarify that, please. If you don't use this $2 million in this rate stabilization fund, it's gotta be used to lower the water rate. We're a nonprofit, this is revenue, this is revenue. This is revenue that was generated on the water rate. And we've got to be very careful how we, decide to use this money. I just want to.
I don't disagree, Scott, except that the board could come up with a reason to spend the
Well,
money. I
yes,
mean,
they
you
could.
can't just say, oh, we want to put $2 million in a.
Right, yeah, we
bank
just gotta be
account.
careful.
I got this tonight, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
But
So where's the 2 million?
Yes.
Let's deal with the creation of the fund, and then we'll deal with the
But in
transfer of
reality-
monies at an appropriate
All right,
time.
if you have a comment, go ahead, Mr. Chair, but I want to.
reality, what we're doing is establishing a rate stabilization opportunity here. It has to be funded, but the bottom line issue is, the board could change their mind in the future. We could have $30 million in it. They can, as long as it's directed someplace in the water situation. I don't think you can, well, I guess you can do anything you want, the board could.
Right.
You wanna
It's a
make
fun balance.
Yeah, you want to make the motion, you brought it up, and I thought you brought up a good point. If you want to make the motion, go ahead, please, and then we'll.
I'm good with what Commissioner Hoffman said, just strike that last
Strike the last-
line so the 2
Want to make the
million
motion, Alan?
disappears.
So I move to amend the further resolved portion and simply strike the last phrase after the words "and that."
I will second that, assuming that our interpretation is that the $2 million and 11 cents is no longer under discussion, we're just creating a fund.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got it. And John says he has it, so there's a motion and a second. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I will just add the only reason that I brought this up is I just didn't want anyone, whether it's a commissioner, a member of the public or anything, to say, whoa, you guys just created a $2 million slush fund. It's not. Scott had a very specific reason that he wanted to do this, which I think I agreed with at the Water Bureau. I just want to make sure that the board doesn't get the idea that they have to do this or nothing at all. They can do something else. That was the point. So with that, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thanks for staying long enough.
That was, that was,
Don't drive speed, don't speed.
that was the amendment. We need a vote on the resolution as amended.
Okay, I thought we amended the resolution, so, but that was an amendment.
As
so-
amended.
so-
As amended, right.
Okay, so the resolution as amended, this is the Board of Finance recommends the District Board the creation of a water rate stabilization fund dedicated solely for funding in part raw water master plan upgrades. That's pretty much it, right?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Okay. Everyone, anyone in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Good night.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Commissioner Curry, for sticking around. So, you're gonna leave at the best part, what?
I'm gonna do it remotely though. I'm on remotely.
All right.
I actually think we're doing pretty good with time right now tonight. So far, we consider where we could be if we,
Say something before the next agenda.
huh?
Can I say something before the next agenda?
Yeah, sure.
Real
Go
quick,
ahead.
I got something very important to say. I'd like to introduce Sharice Rogers, who's been sitting here with Bob. Sharice has recently been promoted in the budget department. So I just wanted, she's sitting here doing all the work. Bob's taking all the credit. Doing all the work. I'd like to just acknowledge her, so thank you.
Yes, Sharice, you better go.
Yeah,
work.
So we are now on item number 6.
Yes.
Discussion regarding the 2024 district budget. And this is not, there's no vote scheduled for this or resolution scheduled for it, but it's a presentation of the budget. So Bob, please go ahead.
Sure, and I would be remiss if I didn't give my own special thanks to Sharice Rogers, but also JP Avenoso in the back. You know that we had Lisa Remsen, a 33-year employee, retire recently. And without Lisa, I relied entirely on these two individuals to help produce this proposed book and the presentation that you'll see tonight. So thank you both very much. So before we get started, does everybody have a book? I just want to give you just a quick little orientation. There's tabs here. You'll see the first tab is the operating budget summary. All those pages begin with the letter A. Then there's operating budget revenues. They all begin with B. And the reason why I brought this up is because I want to highlight something in the third section, the operating expenditures that start with C. If you go to page C9, for the district board, the third account down is dues and memberships. You'll see the $110,000 for Metro Hartford. That was the previous meeting. And so that's where the 110 is funded. But if you go even further back, almost towards the end of this section, page C263, you'll see under special agreements and programs for the water, remember, the riverfront recapture is the very last account shown there. And under the proposed 2024 column, you'll see the $1.2 million. And so that's how the book is organized, from the budget summary to the revenues, and then a great deal of detail on the expenses. But since those two were the subject of an entire meeting on its own, I wanted to highlight where those fundings were.
The second page reference was what?
Was C263.
Okay.
So Bob, I do want to say that you, first of all, Commissioner Hoffman and I both asked for these hard copy things this year because it got really difficult last year. So thank you for again that. And we both also asked for comparisons with last year, which I see in just about in every category. You have the two budgets. You have the 2023 and 2024, so we can see if there's an increase, decrease, or it gets wiped out or whatever. That was important to us. It was very hard to find last year. So this year you've made it a lot easier, and it's going to be a lot easier to follow. So please, and go ahead. Thank you.
Great. Well, as long as we're talking about that, you'll notice that the unshaded area is exactly what the chairman was just talking about. It's the budget from the current year, 2023, to the budget proposed for next year, and then the associated variance year over year. How much are we asking more? But I also have shaded, not part of that variance calculation, what the budget was for 2022. So y'all could get an idea for any given account number. Hey, how many budget dollars have you been asking for in the past for this line item? So you actually have 3 years worth of data on each of the pages. So I think we're ready for the presentation. It's a quick one.
Go ahead.
So we're going to do a quick budget calendar, just see where we are. We're going to go a rate overview. I want to highlight the changes from the presentation we did last month. And then what was important to our towns, we're going to have the same presentation tomorrow morning at 8:30 with all of our towns. They want to know about the ad valorem budget in their quarterly installments. And then you had asked a number of questions at the last Board of Finance meeting, and then there were some emailed questions, and we have those addressed at the end, okay? So budget calendar, here we are in September, or excuse me, last month, September, we had the first Board of Finance meeting and town meeting, one right after the other. And here we are in October. At the beginning of the month, the district board referred this budget to the Board of Finance. Tonight, we're here in yellow, and then tomorrow we meet with the towns. November is for the committee's review and the public hearing. So November 2nd, we have a public hearing. November 8th, Public Works and the Water Bureau consider the rates. And then on the 9th, the Board of Finance will, after hearing from the public, after hearing from the committees, they're going to make their recommendation to the full board, which is at the beginning of December, and the full board then approves it, and at the end of the month, we levy the tax and publish the ordinances, okay? So that's what we have in front of us. This page here is very, very similar to what we had last month. We're collecting $53.1 million in ad valorem. No change to what we collected in this current year. Proposed for next year, we're 2024, we're proposing no increase to the water rate. That's at $3.80 this year. Proposed for $3.80 next year. The only change is very small at the bottom. You'll see where it says 213.5 million. In September, it was 213.3, and those are rounded to the 100,000. So let me just go over in a quick slide what we changed. So the changes are shown and highlighted in green. If you look at the chart on the right side of the page, you'll see the $213.3 million at the very bottom. That's what we presented last month. But what we're presenting this month is in October, you'll see in the column with the yellow header, and you'll see that it's just shy of the 213.5. If you look at the variance column, it was 164,000. So we increased the budget by 164,000 in these three categories. Payroll increased $104,000. That had to do with two of the people we were moving from, not two. The individuals we are moving from OpEx to CapEx, when we presented in September, they were more expensive employees than what actually was going to move over. So I had to move some dollars back. That was about 79,000. And then we brought before you the cost of Juneteenth holiday for next year. I think I have it in another slide, but I think there were 8 cost centers where we increased the overtime and the on-call pay. And it was $25,508. So between the change in the personnel moving over to the capital side and Juneteenth, that total was $104,000. So the second category was operations, and this was 2 things. We added the can crushing outside service contract that we had discussed, about $24,000. And then we also added or restored the district board travel budget. That was travel and training budget. That was our fault. When we developed the presentation in September, we had grabbed the previous funding, but in this year, you increased your funding for that category by 20 grand. We forgot it, we apologize. It's now restored in this recommendation. And then the last thing was just non-operations. In September, we had not included an increase for our 36 flood policies. A few of them come due in October. Most of them come due in March, and then there's a few more in April. So what I did is I went back and I looked over the last 2 years. These are determined by the government, right? And so what have been the increases? I think 2 years ago, a year-over-year increase was 12%. Last year, the year-over-year increase was 8%. I just split it in the middle, and I said we should at least plan for another 10% from 23 to 24. I won't know for sure until March and April when the majority of the policies come through. So those are the only changes that we made between what we presented last month and what's in front of you tonight. The next slide is just, and this is what our town managers are going to be most interested in. You'll see at the top of the chart, the ad valorem. This information is actually on page B26 in your book as well, but here you have it. I think I also, just because I had room, the back page on your handout sheet, it's here. But it just shows that we're collecting the same $53.1 million in ad valorem as we did in 2023. The bottom chart just tells the towns what their quarterly payments are. It's a little tricky, not difficult, but a little tricky calculation because remember the towns are on a July through June budget and we're on a calendar year. And so we calculate the payments for them so that they could put them into their fiscal year budget that is different than ours. So we'll cover that with them. But the last page is our follow-up. Now, I'm sorry, I don't know, did you all get this handout? It might be easier to see, it's just 2 pages. Let's see. Good, okay, did they, Julie, did they get this? Okay, so it's 2 pages, you'll see a yellow, green, and blue, or yellow, green, and pink, lines on the pages. The first question you'll see up here, I'm not talking about the handouts just yet. Let's look at the slide. The slide says you had a question on catch basin billing. John sent you a note with the billings through the second quarter of 2022. Well, we've since, I think it was from December of 2015 to the second quarter of 2023. But we've since billed the third quarter of 2023, so it went up 92,000. So we wanted to just to update you and let you know that the total billed to the city of Hartford is now $67,000. The second item here, oh, that's interesting. I have a parentheses on mine. But anyway, the second item here says the cost of Juneteenth is the $25,508. We already covered that on a previous slide. 8 cost centers, increases to on-call and overtime pay. The third one was, hey, did you guys plan on an energy consultant? Our contract is expiring in 2024. And we did plan on it. It's in the procurement's outside service contract budget, and it's only about $15,000. It's not a significant amount of money, but it was asked and now answered that we did plan on that cost.
So let me ask you about, it's already in the budget, right? I thought it was less than that, but 15 is.
Yeah, it's already accounted for in procurement's outside service contract budget line item.
I thought that was 7,500, Bob.
Yeah, we thought it was maybe 7,500, but at
Yeah.
15?
I think it was 7,500. We planned on 15. If we don't spend it, we won't use it.
That's okay, but it's good with me, because this is gonna be a big contract negotiation when we get to next November or whatever it is, or obviously before that, in November, they're gonna pull the plug if we don't have a contract in November, so, okay.
Cool. So the next one is the hydroelectric trend. I just thought it'd be easier if you looked at a handout and had it in front of you. I had proposed in this budget that we are going to use $1,554,000 from the hydroelectric surplus to benefit the sewer fund, which lowers the ad valorem. And I got the question, well, how much money do we have in the hydroelectric budget? Tell me what that's all about. So if you take a look at this, it's this 2-pager stapled together. And at the top, it says handout 1. I have a trend from 2007 all the way through to 2022. If you look at 2007 and you look at the yellow line, that net income is the amount of money, revenues minus expenditures, that the hydroelectric fund was generating. So you could see a positive number in that yellow line showing that the hydroelectric fund was making money each year. But then drop all the way down to the green line, and you'll see in 2007, what was that? $4,276,000 is what we had. And so in 2008, you'll see in the pink line, we took $1,550,000 of it. And then in 2009, another $1,550,000, and we kept taking money from the hydroelectric fund. It was established, and when it was established, it said any surplus funds will be used for the benefit of the sewer fund only. And so you can see that pink line, we were drawing money all the way through 2013, right? And look at 2013, drop down to the green line, how much was left over after we did those 7 years worth of reductions? Is only $33,000. So we've done this before, but no more pink on the page, right? We haven't done it in a while, so let's go all the way to 2022. I put a red box around it at the bottom of the page. We got about the same amount of money again, right? We got $4,663,000. Well, we don't take it all at once. We don't want to create for one-time revenue. We don't want to create a one-time benefit that can't be repeated in the next year. That plays havoc with the rates, or in this case, the ad valorem that we have to charge. You don't want to give someone a big benefit one year and then they put it in their budget and the next year they got to pay another $500,000. You want to be able to amortize it over a period of time, like we did with the pink line back in 2007 to 2013. So we've amortized that over 3 years. If you divide that $4.7 million by 3, that's the $1,554,000 that we're proposing to benefit next year's budget, the ad valorem. It's what helped us keep the ad valorem flat because we're bringing that money in. So the handout too, I think if you flip over the page, you'll see I was also asked, hey, how are we doing on our funding for our fiduciary? The trust funds, by definition, are other people's money. They're owned by the members of the trust. So we have a pension trust fund and we have an OPEB trust fund. The pension trust fund promises pension payments, and the OPEB trust fund promises health care coverage to our retirees. And so it's a pretty simple calculation. The actuaries every year, they'll tell me, hey, all these promises you've made for pension, what is that liability in today's dollars? And then they compare it to the assets that we have on hand, and you either have enough, you're overfunded, or you're underfunded. And if you go to the bottom of the pension chart, this of course is the handout number 2. If you go to 2023, you'll see that they had determined as of January 1st, 2023, our pension trust fund had total liabilities of $329 million. And they had an actuarial value of assets of $253 million. So the yellow column to the far right says you're 77.1% funded. That's a pretty healthy funding level when you look at nationwide where people are with their pensions. But I was also asked, hey, weren't we close to 100% somewhere in the past? It was. I wanted the information because I'm responsible for the information, but it was really difficult to get. We got 27 years worth of history for you, and that's what you have in front of you. In the last 27 years, the highest funding level we have, I put in a red bracket. We had about 92.8% funded. But remember, as long as we're funding they used to call it the ARC, the actuarially required contribution. Now it's called the actuarial determined contribution. As long as we fund that at 100% every year, that's their calculation saying that if you fund this at 100% level, you're going to have the assets necessary to pay the liabilities when they come due in the future. And we do. We fund at 100%. So even though we're currently only at 77% funded, we're doing the right thing by funding that ADEC payment at 100% every year. So if you drop down to the bottom page, these are our healthcare promises, our OPEB fund. And you'll see as of 1/1/2023, we had $123 million worth of liability and about $11.3 million worth of assets. We're 9.1% funded. So the couple things I want to tell you about that is that if you look at that right-hand column, we're increasing our funding percentage every year. This is a relatively new trust fund. We just started funding it a few years ago, and our funding percentage is increasing every year. And so we are funding 100% of what the actuary tells us to do in the OPEB fund. So we're doing the right thing on this trust fund as well. I just thought I would answer this question before it's asked. If you see that little pink area that I highlighted, the 2019 liability was $374 million, but the 2020 liability dropped down to $182 million. And you might say, well, healthcare promises couldn't have changed that much. But I put the reason down below in a pink paragraph. If the Government Accounting Standards Board, GASB, and the Financial Accounting Standards Board, FASB is for private sector, GASB is for public sector. Their headquarters both happen to be located here in Connecticut, in Norwalk, Connecticut. The GASB said, if you have not established a trust and planned on addressing this long-term liability, you need to recognize liability on your books based on a discount rate that is equal to a 20-year index of yields on high-grade municipal bonds. So what I would go out to market if I was a AAA rated community and I'd borrow money for. And for that year, it was 2.74%. When you're dividing a liability, 10 years out, by 1 plus the discount rate to the 10th power to bring it back, that the lower that number is, the higher your result is going to be. But look what happened after we established the trust. When we established the trust, we were allowed to do an actuarial recommended discount rate, and it was no longer 2.74%. It was 6.875%. So when you're dividing by a bigger number, the result is dramatically reduced. And so that's the reason we dropped from the 374 down to the 182.
I have a quick question about that. So
Sure.
my understanding, and I think I've mentioned this before, that we had a contribution from the employees to the OPEB fund. And so is this the first year that that's not going to happen? Or?
Yes.
So just a question for me, how much, my understanding is that it was around $500,000 that, or so? Or?
Oh, off the top of my head, I was thinking it was more like 200,000, but I honestly don't remember. But
you may be right, because I thought
this
it was
year,
going to be.
this is the first year, yeah.
When we originally proposed, it was 1%, but I think that when Bart was here, he got it down to 0.5% of contribution they wanted to make. So it's 0.5% on the total value of the salaries. So you're saying that's 200 or something? 200?
Well, it was 1% of the person's pay because I paid it last year, but I'm not paying it this year. And that's what was contributed into the fund.
Yeah, I think that's going to be very hard to ever get back. I don't know why we did that. I am questioning. I don't know why we did that. Because we had basically the staff's fingerprint, and from my understanding, they didn't really complain. They weren't complaining about it. They didn't have a complaint about it. So, but we gave up the ability to raise anything from them. We'd have to go back. I mean, it's still there. We'd have to go back and collective bargaining and go through that again, I guess, at some point. So.
Well, if I might, that was part of the negotiation. So the negotiation with our union contracts this year was we looked at a number, 20 or so items, which were all part of a package, and we're only receiving about $300,000 of a very large number. So that's why, Commissioner, it was
Well, no, I
negotiated out.
understand it's not a big number, but it is the fingerprints, you
Yeah.
know, of those guys on it. And I feel like some ownership because it was my idea. And Bart got it negotiated, but you know, I mean, it was the first one. I don't think anybody had any. I still don't think most municipalities have contributions from their employees. I don't know whether.
The ones in Connecticut that I was associated with did not have an OPEB
yeah,
contribution, so.
But all right, go ahead. I just wanted to make sure I knew how much we gave up with that. I'm sure we got it back somewhere else, Scott.
Yes, we did.
You know, so, but we gave up
And some.
that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So the third item here is the water customer service revenue trend. That's handout number 3. I think in the presentation in September, I was talking about the $21.7 million we got in customer service charges, and I put in parentheses domestic, commercial, industrial, and resale. And someone said, well, I'd like to know, you know, break that out for me, give me an idea. So I did. I broke it out, and it looks like the lion's majority of that $21.7 million comes from the domestic category. It's 80, I have it in red, 82.5%. The next one is commercial at 12.3%. And then we have very small amounts for municipal, industrial, and resale. But just because the question was asked, I wanted to be able to break out and give that detail to you so you knew what comprised our water customer service charge. And remember, that charge is assessed based on the meter size. Just because I had room on the back page, I was printing on both sides. I went ahead and put the ad valorem on the back page of that handout. So the last item up here is the impact of additions to the proposed budget. We've talked about a wide variety of things, from management studies to salary studies to giving the district board a legal budget of its own. I thought I would put this here just to give you an idea of what the impact would be for any money added to the budget. Most of these items would come into an administrative cost center. I'm sorry.
I have to interrupt you if I might. I'm sorry, Bob. Through you, Mr. Chairman, if I might. Chris Stone, District Council, you and I had a conversation about this particular topic of items you want to discuss about a budget. My understanding was, bless you, my understanding was it wasn't about adding an additional line item for a legal budget for the board. It was about making sure that the legal department's budget had enough monies to support the defense of the tunnel claim.
Yeah, you're talking about, well, just back up, okay, because I do remember what you and I talked about. I thought he was talking about something else. I'm sorry, so back up and say it again, Bob, about this, what you know.
Well, there was a variety of suggestions on how we might be adding, or you may recommend additions to the budget that's been presented. And so all I wanted to do is...
There were, I'm sorry, 6 suggestions, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, so they weren't really, Chris is right, I mean, they weren't really suggestions to add anything to the budget at this point. So why don't we just go through them one at a time, just so we can, if that's what you want to talk about, just so we can, you know.
Rather than one at a time.
Well, you've already answered, you've already done it, you've already answered, okay. 2 of them, so one at a time. So, I mean, Juneteenth was, the first question was the fiscal impact of adoption of Juneteenth as official holiday of the MDC. You had reported to us before that the addition of this holiday will not require any additional funding in this budget cycle. So you have not changed, even though you went from 20,000 to 25,000, you have not changed the revenue budget. This just remains in the expenditure budget.
You're right.
And that was the first thing. And then the energy consultant, we asked for an estimate of such consultant services because we knew that the contract was gonna run out in 2024. And, again, you came back with, I think it was Chris that told me that you guys had answered that you'd already carried something in the budget for it. So that answers that question. So, and I think we were satisfied, Bill, that that was an amount that we could work with the energy consultant, the 15,000, that's,
Was it 15 or 75?
no, it's 15,000, right,
7,500.
Kelly? That was for the energy consultant. You put it up on the board as 15,000, so.
Right.
What we've paid in the past is 75. We've put in 15 just to be safe.
So what I'm saying is that you already took care of it. We don't need to add anything to the revenue budget for that, okay?
Okay.
So there's 4 items left. So the first 3 already came before PP&I tonight. And what they said was that they're gonna hold off until we get estimates. So each one of those asks, please be prepared to provide an estimate for such a study. Please be prepared to provide an estimate for such a study and presentation to the Board of Finance and District Board, a climate study, salary survey, managerial study. So just looking for estimates from you. There is one more issue here that we're not looking for necessarily for an estimate from you, but it's the same thing. We're looking for an estimate on, so.
Sure. Because I figured you would be picking and choosing among them, we had an estimate for the management study. We looked at what we paid Barrington Wellesley back in 2003.
Is that on one of these? Because I didn't see it. Is that one of these pages or?
No, it's not, but what I did is I took the CPI for all the years, for the last 20 years, 2003 to now, and I just said, hey, if we paid $378,000 in 2003, what is that in today's dollars? And it's $628,000. And then I took a look at what we paid Siegel back in 2012 and grew that. And in today's dollars, it's about $230,000.
That's for the main.
Then we just took an estimate. There was a request for a climate study, survey of employees, determining how satisfied they are with the job and the like. And we put that in at 50,000. And I put in an additional 100,000 for a legal budget, just to see where we would end up, and it's about $1 million. If you add all those up, it's $1 million. But we know that it's $1 million. But what impact does that have on the presentations we've made to the ad valorem? Because some of it goes to the sewer budget, and to the water rate, because some of it goes to our ratepayers. So that's what I had in this last slide here. Impact of additions to proposed budgets. No matter what the numbers finally are, this is what happens, is that any administrative costs, all of those things that I just mentioned would go into an administrative cost center. 51% of those are allocated to the water budget, and 49 is allocated to the sewer budget. So what I have in this slide is, I said, every $176,830 charged to the water fund raises the water rate by a penny. And every $530,766 charged to the sewer fund raises the ad valorem by 1%. If we were to add this $1 million and split it 51-49, I wanted to give you an approximate impact of what that would have to the two budgets. On the water side, it would raise the rate by 3 cents. And on the sewer side, we'd have to collect that $490,000 from all of our towns, and it'd represent ballpark a 1% increase to what we collected this year. So that's what I have in that final bullet point.
Okay, and the only question I would have, like, for instance, you got the energy consultant, you got the Juneteenth thing in here, and you just said that you came up with numbers, for the other issues. So I'd like to have those somewhere in writing, and that they go forward with, when we go to, from here, on, that we have those estimates, and then that.
We'll provide that.
Okay.
I mean, you just read them off to us, so
Right.
I'm just.
Yeah.
We'll provide that.
Okay, so.
Yeah, we'll provide it.
Yeah.
And that way, when we go forward, I mean, the board can decide, whether it wants to spend this additional money and purchase these things that some of the board members think are important, maybe others don't, but, at least it'll get there. It'll get there with an estimate, so go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Stone, District Council. Bob, what's the 100,000 for legal for?
Well, it was, I don't know, but it was my interpretation of the email that was forwarded to us by John last week, saying the district, and it said John could read it to us, but the district board would like to have its own legal budget to ensure something.
Is that what was intended with that? You don't.
It says the board should have a budget available for such services to supplement the services of district council at their discretion. So, in other words, if the board says, we need you to do this, we have the money to get you to do it.
I understand.
Not for us to do it, for you to do it.
No, I understand that, but my understanding,
Yeah.
based upon our conversation, was that was all about the tunnel claim and making sure that there were sufficient funds within my budget or within the cap budget for the project.
It was at least in part of. for that,
Okay,
yeah.
then if that's
And maybe
only in
something
part,
else.
then I misunderstood what we had done.
No, there was that, and then we talked about the possibility of the cost of going forward with DEEP and on the issues that we have with DEEP and what that might cost us. We actually have to go to trial. We don't have to do that because you said nobody ever goes to trial with the state of Connecticut. So I mean, but
My only point is that as it sits now, based upon my review of my budget for 2024, I don't need $100,000 more.
Okay.
If the board wants to put more in that budget, just in case,
You're saying you can meet your
I can meet, as I know them to be now. If something catastrophic should come up, extraordinary should come up in 2024, I would be compelled to come back to the Board of Finance, and to the full board to seek additional funds. I don't anticipate that, but you can't anticipate everything. I'll leave that to this board as to what to do with that statement, but if you want to add another $100,000 to my budget, great, but it will have a budgetary impact, which quite frankly, I don't want.
I don't think he's adding anything to the budget. I think these were estimates. These were estimates that the board can use to decide if they want to add something to the budget.
No, when I say
That
him,
was
I
the
mean,
question, yeah.
he's giving you a number. If you want to add it to the.
I asked for estimates. That's what I asked for. So.
I got you.
And I asked for those on behalf of the, like you heard the stuff at PPI tonight, so I asked on behalf of that, so give us an estimate.
I got you.
All right, well, I'm good with that. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, so Commissioner Hoffman, it seems that this list of things that we just went through, item by item, Juneteenth, energy consultant, so forth, so on. Some of the numbers, are not significant amounts, but some of them are significant. And they also, it seems to me, it also is the case that they may be policy decisions as well as financial decisions. And I think given that, if I've understood it correctly, given that, it should be the case that the board actually can express its collective opinion as to whether or not any of these things, all of these things, can be taken with their approval and not leaving it to us to put this package together, and all of a sudden they're faced with a package that, well, they may not be 100% on every item in the package. So I just throw that out as a suggestion that we leave that decision up to the board individually.
Let me answer that.
Go ahead. Oh, yeah.
We're not voting on this. This is basically a request for them to put these estimates together so that the district board can make those decisions. But they would make them with some sort of dollar amount that, you know, I
Just
mean,
an
they can
idea.
argue about the
An
dollar
idea.
amount. They can say, Bob, you're nuts. You know, you don't double the, you know, I mean, it was 300,000, not 600,000 now. I
Gotcha.
mean, or they can say, well, we don't have to do a whole thing, or we can do part of, I mean, that you're right. That's up to the district board. But with the opportunity to respond to some of the things that I heard from commissioners and chairman, all we did was say, give us some estimates for these things in case the board, at its discretion, wants to go forward with them. That's all. So I thank you for trying to put it together. I'm sorry that they got confused about that stuff.
I think that would be left up to the board, but I think that the purpose, if you look at what the original intent was of the people that formed this place, and then there were some changes, the Board of Finance at one time had to adopt a budget by a majority vote. The board had to amend it by a 2/3 vote.
Right.
We changed that in 1992 or 93. Dick Torpy had a bill and I supported it in the Senate. And what we did is we felt that it made more sense to equalize it with the board so that but at some point in time, when this organization was put together, there was a lot of concern on how that was handled, and they gave an extraordinary power to the Board of Finance by adopting it with a majority vote and then requiring the board to amend it by a 2/3 vote. So you can see that there was some concern that people had relative to process.
Mhm.
And we changed that in 92 or 94 in the legislature, made it majority both ways. They were making it harder for the board to change something that, and that's why you had public members on there and you have board members on the preparation of that budget in the Board of Finance.
Okay, so. Any questions from any of the
Just
board
say-
members first? Because I have a question, but I want to wait for the board members to finish. Go ahead. Go ahead, Bill.
I'm just saying that this could be moved to the board, and the board could still make decisions that they want to change, and you'd have to find out what it is. I mean, rather
That was the whole
on the
point.
board on everything, it's the Board of Finance should make a budget up that they believe is realistic, send it to the board, and they make a decision, the final decision. It can't be controlled by either the Board of Finance or, the Board of Public Works or the Board of Water.
Okay. Bob, thank you on the presentation. You all set? So,
Yes.
yes, and thank you. I hope you guys, you did have a cake for Lisa Remsen, didn't you?
Yes,
You had
we
a
did.
cake, goodbye, thanks.
Mr. Chair, I had a few
So,
questions.
Okay, Commissioner.
Adjourn. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a few questions. I'm not really looking for a response, or maybe we can have an offline, is one of the things that I've heard tremendously, especially like from West Hartford and the other towns, is the potential of creating a sewer district. And I'm wondering if it's time that potentially we look at a study or something about our 8-member towns creating a distinct and separate sewer district. And maybe that's hiring a consultant to give us a report. I don't know if there's been one done in the past that we can look at or just update. But I think that that might be just a worthwhile study, and maybe even look at partner organizations who might be looking into it as well. So,
He's talking about stormwater.
correct, I'm sorry, yes, sorry,
Yeah, that was going to be my question too. You're not.
sorry,
I
my
understood you were
apologies.
talking about sanitary sewers. You're talking about stormwater.
Correct, stormwater, sorry.
I think that's an appropriate thing for you to bring up if you want to, you know.
We
just,
did.
So,
Propose something of that nature to the legislature and received a bunch of rejection from, I think it was West Hartford was one of the objecting parties when we brought it to the legislature. It was about 6 or 8 years ago, Scott, when it was
It's
turned
been a
around.
while, yeah.
Yeah, and that was an initial issue. We were bringing up as a discussion issue.
Yeah, if I may, Commissioner, and I'll resend it. I have sent out a report on this very topic at least 3 times to all the commissioners about this very, very issue. I'll resend it. We had engineering consultant that did some work for us back in 2000, I want to say 17. Talked about all this stuff that we're talking about. So I'll resend that. It's a great point. We've been talking about this forever. I agree 100%. We need to start thinking about this because it's going to be a huge expense for our towns.
Exactly, and then I think just a couple others, Mr. Chair, if I may continue on a couple of questions. I think one of the things that we do here at MDC is we provide some of the best water in the entire country. And I think one of the things that we don't do is push that a little bit more. So if I'm walking in a West Hartford reservoir, I can't fill up my water bottle because we don't even provide water, drinkable water there. Here at district headquarters, we don't provide that. You know, if you look over in other countries or other cities, you have access to clean water. We here at our main building don't provide something like that. I think being a member of the Community Relations, I think our Community Affairs Committee, and I've talked to Commissioner Lewis a little bit about this, I think that there's small things that we should do to promote how good our water is and make sure that it's available to our customers. So I would encourage, whether it be done through existing budget line items, that we look at some of those things to provide to our ratepayers when they are near our facilities or accessing some of our recreational facilities, some of the best stuff of what we do the best. So I would hope that we could encourage that. The other two last items that I'd like to bring up, I think that there is some opportunity, I brought it up beforehand, on a state level through CIF funds, through DECD, to help encourage some of the economic development. I know other such towns have tapped into bond fund money to help encourage some growth and development. And I think that we should look at where some of the high spots specifically in the city of Hartford are, that we might be able to ask for specific line item budgets to help us improve some of those, to encourage development, because eventually it comes back to us because our customers are using water. And last but not least, and Scott, we can take this offline as well, I'd really like to see how we can look at not necessarily building a ton of infrastructures like large tunnel projects, but how we look at things through a more sustainable, green way to try and provide some services to help alleviate stormwater or other stuff, and how we start to move forward. And I think that we should really be focusing on that, because we just can't build enough tunnels for what we're going to be facing in the next 15 to 20 years on a climate change issue. So again, pieces to just put out there, but I think that these are things that impact our budget. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And you're welcome, and I would say, you know, especially with your last comments, that, you know, and Scott will tell you that we've tried this, I don't know how many times we've tried this, all the way back to before Scott was the CEO, about, you know, creating the flood control or stormwater control plan for all 8-member towns here. And, you know, the only thing missing is we can do, I think this staff can find money and grants or whatever we could do if we needed to. The only thing missing is the towns. The towns have to decide that they want to do this. And if they don't decide that they want to do it, so if it becomes, you know, an issue where, you know, our motivation is to get the towns into this, I would agree with you. We got to get, you know, I'd get my town, get your town, everybody gets their town interested in forming, you know, a stormwater plan. That's where you would start, that a plan that crosses over town lines. It's ridiculous that, you know, a river goes from West Hartford to Hartford, and at the town line, the stormwater plan changes at the town line. The river doesn't know that. The Trout Brook doesn't know that. It just, you know, yeah, it does whatever it wants to do. So, but I think that's what we're going to need. So, without any further,
I'll resend that.
Yeah, absolutely. So
That should be a legislative delegation.
absolutely, it should be, and
Try to do it once.
you know, and we need to get the towns to tell the legislature that. We need them to get them to do it.
You want all the towns to go support it.
Sure. If there's nothing else, then I'll entertain a motion to,
Opportunity for general public comment.
oh, I forgot. And we already did that once, so I'm sorry if I thought we did it already. Any opportunity for general public comments?
Thank you, Judy.
Hearing none?
Commissioner requests for future agenda.
We tried.
That's not on this agenda.
That was.
Oh, that's a
before, yeah.
special meeting? Commissioner request for future agenda items, go ahead. Are there any requests for future agenda items? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Without objection, meeting's